Jenny, hello. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be doing this with you face to face, in person. How are
Yes,
you?
what a treat. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you today. So thank you so much.
No worries. My pleasure to be here with you in Valencia doing this. There's so much we're going to be talking about today. We met, I can't even remember how long ago. I think it's probably like 9 or no, more than that, because it was before I moved to Australia, and that was 2014.
yes.
So it would have been probably close to 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I know, time flies,
Yes.
doesn't it? So we met at one of your amazing retreats in Valencia, where I met incredible women. I think that was the first time something really sparkled inside of me and told me there was something in yoga, in meditation, in journaling. Actually, you were the one that got me into that path. But yeah, I'm just so grateful to you for everything you do to inspire women and people in general to just slow down a little bit, to explore, to go into new, paths in life. And yet that retreat was what kind of like got me into it, and super grateful for it. And of course, super grateful to our friend Marta as well, who inspired me to join. We're going to talk today a lot about all of those things. We're going to talk about finding our purpose. We're going to talk about stillness, gratefulness, love, exploring life experiences. But I really want to start getting to know you a little bit better. I always like to start conversations going down memory lane to know my guests a little bit better. So can you tell us a bit about who you are, where you come from, and how you ended up here in Valencia?
Yeah. So I'm Jennison. I'm originally from California, born there, and then we moved to Hong Kong when I was a child. So we lived there for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And I think that kind of even at a young age kind of sparked the idea of it's possible to live in new places and to travel to new places. And I liked being around different cultures and kind of out of your comfort zone, even at a young age. So I think that experience really stuck with me moving through life. We moved back to California, and I grew up in California basically, and about 10 years ago came here on a little sabbatical from life, came to Europe for 6 months, and met my now husband the first week that we were here.
The first week?
Yeah, the first week watching the Super Bowl at an American bar in Valencia.
So, what was he doing watching the Super Bowl?
He was always into American sports, football and basketball, and so we had that in common at the time and met there and stayed friends for a couple of years. We'll get into that story later, maybe. Stayed friends for a couple of years and then kind of did a little bit of back and forth and then decided to move here. So traveled across the world, moved here, and started my life really here. So it just started with like a little extended holiday in Valencia that turned into the biggest adventure of my life.
Amazing. And what year did you travel to Valencia for the first time?
I think 2013.
Okay.
No, yes, maybe.
And then you went back to California a year later?
Went back to California after a few months. Went back to California, came back maybe a year and a half later for a visit, kind of did this sort of thing. Yeah. And then in 2015 moved here. And
then you guys were already together and had decided that
this was life here.
This is it.
Yeah. We thought we'd stay for 2 years. I told my whole family, like, we're just gonna go. It's just easier to get married there, and it's a really nice life. We'll be back in 2 years, and now it's been maybe 7 or so. So
as it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I love the most about you is how loud and proud you are about your love for your husband, your son, and your life in general. I think you're super vocal about oh, Kylo. We've got Jennison's dog here with us today, and he's super cute and amazing. But yeah, I was saying that you're super vocal about the things you're grateful for and the things and people you love. And that's beautiful, because at the moment we are just so surrounded in the media in particular by like negative news and drama, and it's just so refreshing to get more hope and positivity and inspiration from people like you. So can you tell us a bit more about how that love story started? And I don't know if this happens to you guys, but obviously Rowan is from Australia, so I think there might be some similarities in terms of like our relationship dynamics, but for us, it's been incredibly challenging at times, the fact that we're from very different backgrounds and we're just really different people, but that's also at the same time been kind of a blessing in disguise, and it's helped us connect on a much deeper level than I would have ever imagined. Has this happened to you guys? How was it at the start, that the first couple of years where you're like getting to know each other, and then today, like is it still very obvious and apparent that you're from different backgrounds, or how has it been for you?
So I think, yeah, I definitely relate to what you're talking about. And I think at the beginning, our differences are kind of what attracted us to one another. It feels like exciting and exotic. You're curious. It's uncomfortable. You're kind of challenged to explore the other person in a deeper way than you would with even a friend from the same culture. So I would say our friendship at the start was deeper than most friendships I ever had, because you had to work on communication and you had to be really intentional about creating a safe space to express yourself. I remember feeling like the most patient person in the world, and maybe that's changed over the years.
Does he speak good English now?
Yes. Yeah. So when we met, he spoke much better English than I did Spanish. Okay. To be able to have a friendship. So that's kind of how we started our relationship in English, was he could go deeper than I could go in Spanish. Yeah. And now his English is incredible. He works all day in English, and yeah, it's been, so now the communication as far as language has become easier, but culturally, yes, things are different. And then having a child together, that's just a whole nother ball game as far as cultures. And raising children in Spain is very different than raising children in the States, from everything to food and what time they go to sleep to, well, everything. Yeah. So I think having a child has been another challenge in that way, but at the same time, I think it's brought us so much closer, because we've just created our own way to have a family, something unique to both of us.
Which is probably incredibly unique, right? Because it's a mix of cultures, but also like just really, again, unique to you too.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it was attractive and exciting at first, and I think it still is. I think he makes me laugh all of the time, and it makes it fun to kind of explore that, and to travel to different countries together, or he comes to America, or we're here. We're continuously learning about each other. And maybe you find that too, that it's just a process always, and it's kind of fun.
Totally. It's super fun. It's like the fact that there are so many things that we still don't know about each other and about each other's childhood and like background and countries. Like I lived in Australia for 3 years, but still 3 years in the grand scheme of things is nothing. So I find that amazing. And sometimes it's with the daily grind, you kind of not talk about those things that much, but then you go out on a date, or like go out and get a drink or a coffee, and when you go a bit deeper and start talking about like family or past, or like habits, whatever, it's just really beautiful, because there's always new things coming up. It's amazing. And in terms of like the differences being a challenge or being something that has actually brought you together, so you think it's actually the latter rather than
I mean, I think definitely, I think it made everything more romantic. Also, him being European, I think his spirit is more aligned with my spirit. I didn't really relate to the American culture so deeply. So finding a man who was so open and expressive and affectionate and wants to take a walk on the beach and look at the moon, those types of things, for me, I love that. And a lot of my girlfriends are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to walk on the beach and look at the moon, but I'm like, I do.
I know.
I want to be swept away, and I couldn't really find that in most men that I grew up with or dated. So it was very romantic in that way, and I felt much more connected to that type of a partner. Or even a friend. At the beginning, we could walk on the beach and look at the moon as friends, and to me it's like, yes, like this is the magic of life. And I just always knew, like, even meeting him from the beginning, I could never go back. Like I kind of got a glimpse of what love could be like.
Yeah.
And no matter what was going to happen between us, I knew like this was the direction that I was going, and I was going to allow myself to believe in big love and to believe in fairy tales and romance, because I always knew that that's what I wanted and that's what I deserved. And so yeah, there was no turning back. After locking eyes with him, it was like, okay, this is, at least in some way, this moment has changed my life.
That's amazing, and it's so beautiful. And if I'm honest, that has been one of my biggest challenges in our relationship, because Rowan's from Australia, and he's probably on the opposite end of the spectrum from your husband. But
he doesn't want to look at the moon.
He does a little bit now, but it's been a journey, and it's just been funny. It's gone through different stages. Like at the beginning, we were housemates for 6 months, and we were just housemates, and there was a lot of tension, but nothing happened. So when we actually got together, it was incredible. It was an explosion of love and passion. But then, we've gone through stages. We moved to Spain. We lived here for 7 months. It wasn't the best time because he didn't really find a fulfilling job, and he's very much a person that is super driven and like ambitious, and he didn't feel himself. And we moved to London. It's just been like we've gone through different stages where we've had to kind of like adapt and focus on other things, and we almost forgot to be romantic. But now that's luckily it's changed, and like we've finally settled. We've got our own little house, and like it's just like as a person we're very different, and like I very much crave that romanticism and like just like that feeling when you just hug someone and it's just warm and home and like casa, right? It feels like home. Like I haven't had that with Rowan at some point in our relationship, but it's been through communicating those needs and like really telling him who I am, what I need, and equally him telling me like, look, this is a journey, right? Like I'm super happy to open up to being different, changing certain habits, whatever, but like it's gonna take me time, and you need to teach me as well, because it's just, as you said earlier, like it's cultural, and a lot of his mates and like men in Australia, they just don't know any better. It's in our culture, men are super like affectionate, maybe not necessarily romantically, all of them, but like you'll hug your mates,
one another.
Exactly. So it's been a journey, but I feel like when I think back to the person he was, and honestly I was as well, we've been together coming up to 7 years. It's been incredible, and it's just like that mix of our past, our present, and our journey together. I think it's so incredible. But I think in terms of like sharing how you feel about your relationship, because you talk a lot about that as well on social media and like with people, do you ever wonder whether like how that makes other people feel? Because sometimes I feel like I really want to share my journey and my love for Rowan and our life and our relationship and our story, but then other times I feel like I don't know if it's counterproductive, if it's gonna hurt people that are potentially searching for something or have been hurt in love relationships. How do you feel about sharing those more private bits of your relationship?
I think if you're going to speak about anything loudly, it should be love. And I think definitely it can be triggering for people, but at the same time it can be inspiring. I've had a lot of people over the years reach out to me and kind of say thank you for those messages and for that message of hope. I was married when I met my husband. Actually with my ex-husband when I met him.
Right.
So I kind of know the pain of being with a wonderful, kind person, but knowing that it's not right.
Yeah.
And that feeling of losing hope. And I just kind of always knew that I was meant for a bigger love, but I had accepted that I was going to have a good enough life.
Yeah.
And I think my mission for the people that I'm close to or in a close circle, maybe it's thousands of people online, but for those people, my mission is to let people know that you can live a big, dreamy life, and you deserve a big, dreamy love if that's what you're searching for. Like I said, I have a lot of close friends who don't want to feel super romantic with their husband. They only want to have that feeling of safety and home, and for them, that's what they dream of. But for the people who are like me, who feel like, oh, I always thought love would be something more, and something bigger. I want them to know, like, yeah, it's out there, and wait and keep pursuing and being intentional about having these conversations with people that you meet, and let yourself dream of that and let yourself receive that. I think we, especially culturally in America, maybe Australia, we allow ourselves to settle quite a bit for the good enough and kind of get into the rat race of like, you date, you move in together, you buy a house, you have great jobs, you have children, and that's what life is all about. And I feel like it's almost my duty sometimes to let people know, like, it's okay not to do the traditional thing. Yeah. Everything that we did was completely non-traditional. Yeah. And it was not easy, and it wasn't the path that many people would have wanted for us maybe, but it was always driven by love and the knowing of like, we're meant to be together and we'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. So yeah, of course, even this Valentine's Day, for example, I was like, maybe this is really triggering for people to see like all the couples posting photos. And so I think when I do it, I try to be really intentional about the message. Yeah. And not of, look at us, we have this amazing love. It's more like, look at us, we have this amazing love, and this is why. We made a lot of sacrifices. We felt a lot of pain to get to where we are, but it's worth it. And hopefully those messages can be inspiring to people who want to and are waiting for their big love. Yeah. Because it's okay to wait for it. Totally. I think when you're in your late 20s and early 30s, it's like, time's ticking, I need to make something happen, rather than waiting to let the one, if you believe in that, kind of come to you. Yeah. So yes, I think about it, but at the same time, I want to talk about love so that other people have hope too.
Yeah, I think as long as it's authentic and coming from a place of wanting to inspire, which is exactly what you do, it's absolutely fine. And ultimately, it's going to help people. Like, the beauty of social media as well is that when a message really resonates, people normally let you know, right? And it's just so beautiful. Like, I love what you do, and like, please keep doing it because it's super inspiring. And I feel like in terms of, you know, finding your truth in your relationship and your truth about yourself, and you know, where you belong, who you belong with, there are lots of similarities between your, you know, relationship with love and relationship with where you are and where you settle. In terms of settling in Valencia, which is, you know, was on the other end of the world from your home, like, how was that process? Was it easy? Was it always smooth? Do you feel like you belong here, or do you kind of sometimes still have that funny feeling of, you know, I belong here but I don't? Like, are you a ciudadana of the world?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I don't know that I know the answer to that. I would say I definitely feel like when I go back to California that I don't really belong there anymore. There are people that I surround myself with that I feel like I belong to them. My family and my best friends, I feel at home with them. But as far as the culture and being there, that doesn't feel like home anymore. Valencia feels like home. When we come here, it's like, oh, it's home. I've always felt like Europe. Well, the first time I came to Europe, I was 21, I think, and I arrived in Greece and was like, I'm getting the chills just thinking about it, and it was like, this is my place. Like, this feels like home. So even before meeting my husband, I always felt like Europe was home in some sort of way. I felt like myself here. But it's been hard, like you said. I would say the hardest thing was making deep friendships. Kind of expect to have your best friends here, and then you realize that it took years to make your best friends back home. And once I realized, like, oh, I don't need to have my Bryn here, I don't need to have my Katie here, like, I get to have my Martha, I get to have my Maria, I get to have my Jessica. Like, it's okay to have different ones, but finding deep friendships, I would say, was really the hardest thing for me, was not having my sisters here, not having my best friends here. So once I made girl friendships, I think it started to feel more like home. So yeah, Valencia feels like home. I need to learn the language better.
How do you feel about your Spanish? Right?
Muy bien. Muy bien. Hablo español, pero I have to study it to, I think, feel really integrated. Mm-hmm. So I think in the next couple years, I think that's the missing piece. I speak Spanish. I can communicate. I can have a relationship in Spanish, a friendship in Spanish, but it's not 100% anywhere. Everywhere feels a little bit like home, but rather than feeling like I'm lacking home in certain places, I feel like I have a piece of home in many places of the world.
I could not relate more to that. It's like, especially the bit about making deep friendships. It's something, especially having moved around quite a lot, because I lived in Australia for 3 years and left at the point where you're starting to like, because people tend to think that, you know, living overseas for 6 months or something, it's like, you know, long enough, and it's like you haven't even begun to get to know your you know, your manzana where you live, let alone like properly settle and make friendships. So I left when I, you know, at the time where I already had like really good connections, and I had to start over in London, and you know, it's just like learn the culture as well, because for me, I thought London would be really similar to Australia, but like they could not be any more different.
Is this your first time living in London?
Yes, first time. Yeah. In fact, I remember when Rowan, so we moved to London because he got an offer from his Australian company to work in London. And I remember a couple of weeks before he got that offer, I said, look, if we have to move anywhere else in Europe, that's absolutely fine, but please not London.
No way.
It was like, because in Spain, a lot of people move to London or go to London for the summer to make a bit of money and like work and learn English. And you just cannot do those things. Firstly, there's not a proper summer. So people from Valencia or Spain go to London and they're, you know, devastated because of the weather and like feel, you know, just, like down all the time. Yeah, exactly. Then it's really hard to make money if you're working in hospitality because it's super expensive and like rent is crazy. So I had this really bad image of London, but it's been completely opposite to me. Like I cannot love it more. I've obviously found, I've made it work for me because it's a crazy city. It can really, it's really hard to find yourself if you're not very focused on finding yourself and like prioritizing yourself. It's been challenging and like, but it's just been amazing, and it's been incredible to show myself that wherever I am, as long as I'm making it my home, it will work. And the same for our relationship as well. We're now in London. If we go to Singapore tomorrow, it will be fine as long as home is working, right? But I think with all of these things, it's about really letting go of wanting to control everything and know what's going to happen in the next 3 years and 5, and really just being okay with uncertainty, right? In fact, I remember a quote you shared recently on Instagram. I think it was a quote from Buddha that was something like, change isn't painful, it's the resistance to change that is painful. And I find with, you know, looking back at the big changes in my life, it's when I've told myself, Elena, it's gonna be fine. That's when everything's been fine. But to get to that point, it's not easy, right? And it takes a lot of work. Like, how do you navigate those moments of uncertainty, and how have you, with the big changes, because obviously from, you know, going from one marriage to another and then moving countries and traveling around, and I know you guys have also been in Italy for a while as well, living, like, in those moments, how, like, what do you do to just be relaxed when everything's super uncertain?
I think what you said is that if home is safe and secure, you can take that feeling with you anywhere. So I think I always come back to, okay, big picture, like the big things are going well. When I start to unravel or worry or start to deal with anxiety or even depression, it's looking at that. Okay, the most important things in my life, my husband and my child, our health and our safety, those things are not only okay, but they're really good. So that's okay. Everything else is going to be okay. If we lose a job, we have each other. If one of us is dealing with a health issue, we have each other. Everything else loses its importance.
I'm getting goosebumps.
And everything else loses its importance and gets to be just a part of the adventure. So I can't say if we started to unravel how I would be able to handle other difficult parts of life. I don't know. Thankfully, we haven't faced that. but we've been really intentional always to keep the couple and our family as priority number one.
Yeah.
And nurturing this space first, because I can lose it quite easily. Anxiety can come in very easily. So I think that just kind of maintaining the perspective, and it's this growth process. I mean, the past 15 years has been a huge journey of growth for me, and coming back to practices like meditation and yoga and stretching and drinking my water and taking a nap, those types of things help me to stay grounded. But yeah, it's, the phrase of like, go with the flow.
Yeah.
You can kind of throw that out. When I was younger, I'd throw that out, but now I understand that meaning of this like surrender and allowing things to happen and having faith and trust that it's all going to work itself out.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because sometimes it's the most simple and basic things, like just taking a second to go to the kitchen and have a glass of water and really enjoying that, or like just pausing for a sec, and like you might have a family lunch on Saturday and then dinner with friends, and then maybe party not that much these days, but like just commitment after commitment. And it's about just like making sure that you're securing a little bit of that time for yourself, for quality time with your husband, with your son, and like just allowing a little bit of space to breathe, right? But one of the things I sometimes think about is, because I know for me what's taught me that is my journey with yoga and meditation and like journaling, which again I started thanks to you, but also daring to do new things and meeting new people and just taking myself out of the comfort zone. And I know this sounds like un tópico, but it's true. It's like you need to put yourself in new situations to look at life differently, because they don't teach us these things at school. They don't teach us to be adventurous. They don't teach us to prioritize ourselves. They don't teach us to take it easy and breathe and allow space for our brains. And they don't teach us to question life, which I think is hugely important to ultimately like find out who we are and what we want. Like for you, was it yoga that really gave you that incredibly powerful skill to question life constantly and like turn down the outside noise and like turn up your inner voice, really? Like, was it yoga or was it something else?
That's a good question. I think I always, from a very young age, kind of just did things differently. And not really rebellious at all. I was a good kid. I got great grades. I loved school and to study. I was a good girl. But I think I always thought about the world differently or in a deeper way. I think I felt things very deeply, which causes you to question, right? If you're in tune with your body, which I think I was even as a child, like this doesn't feel right. Or I think I would ask the big questions to my parents. And yoga I found when I was about 17. So I started practicing when I was in high school, and wasn't very trendy back then. I was by far the youngest person in the class by like 30 or 40 years. And
how did you start out of interest?
So I was doing a research study for school on fears and phobias and anxiety. So part of it was doing like a practical experiment, basically. So spending hours doing something to kind of prove the research. So that's when I first was introduced to yoga and meditation and breath work even. And I loved it. At that age, I loved the physical part of it, so I kept that with me always. And then about 12 years ago, I went through a really hard time of depression and anxiety and had a great job, a great paying job, had the whole thing, right? And it felt super misaligned, and I knew like this doesn't feel right in my body. This is not okay. And started questioning everything, quit my job, took some time off, really dove deep into yoga again, and it saved my life. And from then it was like, never again will I put myself in this position. This is where I want to go with my life, and changed everything really. And as far as asking the questions, I would say that journaling is really what has inspired that. And it's surprising because you can ask a question to somebody else or to yourself, but if you're not taking the time to meditate on it or write about it, you don't get any sort of real answer. I don't know if you feel the same. Like anytime you start journaling, you surprise yourself with what comes out on the paper.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the beauty of it, is allowing ourselves to really tap in a little bit deeper. I think it's important for us to question, and not really question as far as combative, but more of explorative.
Yeah.
And what does this mean to me, and how do I actually feel about this? And like you said, we're not taught these things. So learning what it means to come back to yourself, what it means to be in tune with your body, physically, emotionally, and then using that to your benefit in relationships and conversations, at work, at home. I think we're lucky to have these practices and to know ourselves in this way, because a lot of people don't. I think children do in the beginning, and then they lose that.
Do you see that in Luca?
Yeah, I can see how deeply he feels and the questions that he has, and I catch myself even putting him into like a box sometimes of just do it this way, just be obedient. Just why? Because I said so.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things. And I try to remember, like, no, this questioning is good, and this disobedience in a way is good. He's challenging the norm, and sometimes, like, yeah, why do we do it that way? Or why is that right and this is wrong? That's a good question. And he's 6, but I can see at school and with family and friends how his world starts to become more and more narrow as far as this is the way. But I hope that he has opportunities at home and at school to learn about coming back to himself. And
with you as his mom, I'm sure he will. But it's so true. In fact, I was just thinking about one of the quotes that really struck with me from that first retreat we shared together, which was, do not dance around the perimeter of who you want to be, but rather dive in completely, which I think is beautiful. And it's something you cannot really do unless you first taken that time to slow down and to reflect and to just take a pen and a piece of paper and write down whatever comes to your mind. And it's, you know, it sounds really basic and sometimes even like useless, like what's the point of writing what comes to my mind? But when you do that, you're actually allowing everything that's inside you to flow, and then from something that might not make a lot of sense in its written form, you can extract incredibly beautiful things. And equally, when you sit down in silence, or from the reason I really love yoga is because I do a younger yoga now. I've been practicing it for a year and I absolutely love it. And the reason I love it so much is because we hold the postures for quite long and you have to be so focused. And then from having an hour and a half twice a week, which I do, but I'm sure a lot of people do more than that, but even, you know, half an hour a week, whatever it is you can do, from having that level of focus and allowing your brain to just fully be there and not think about anything else, then sometimes I leave the class, I'm putting my jacket on or like turning off the laptop if I'm doing it online. And as I'm walking to the kitchen to grab a glass of water, I have the most incredible idea or thought. And it's just from having allowed that space to my brain, right? It's just like, I know it's something, you hear it so much now, oh, just sit down, meditate, breathe. But it really is important to then be able to stop dreaming about the life you want to create and actually actioning it and going for it, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, and I've noticed, especially on retreats, come across many adults who were never, I can specifically remember a time we were in Puglia in Italy, there was supposed to be a meteor shower or an eclipse or something, so we're all laying outside in the garden, this countryside of Italy, and talking about our purpose in life. And one woman who was maybe 40 or coming up to 40, she said, you know, until today, nobody has ever asked me that question.
Wow.
And I thought, yep, that's it. We're not questioning because we're also not being asked good questions. And what are your dreams? And who am I? And what do I desire? And this don't dance around the perimeter of who you are, but dive deeply in. A lot of people are like, okay, but I don't know who I am. How do I dive into that? I don't know what I want, what I desire. Nobody's asked me, and I haven't dared ask myself. So I think that that was a really pivotal moment for me of like, wow, for 40 years, no one has ever asked you about your passions and your purpose. And it can be sad, but also like, okay, but today somebody did.
Yeah.
So let's get started on that, on that journey. It's never too late. And yeah, the journaling part is incredible, but I think you need somebody to show you how, right?
Yeah.
To show you, it's a lot to say, like, journal about your thoughts and feelings, but if you're not being guided in it, it can be really hard to pick up a pen and paper and go for it. Same with meditation, but it's really powerful to be asked questions.
And like, I think these days, yes, it's super helpful when you have someone with a bit more experience guide you or like, you know, share advice or tips, but ultimately we're so lucky and privileged that there's so much information online. There are incredible books. There is this book from Krishnamurti, who's a philosopher, called What Are You Doing With Your Life? And it's all questions.
Yeah, okay.
It's incredible, and I'm not lying, it's genuinely changed my life because it's just asked me all of the right questions. And so I know you also have to take that step to go and buy the book or even come across it, because I don't even know how I came across it, but there is so much available online. It's out there. It's just really just that 1 second, wherever it happens, whenever it happens, if you ever have the thought of, you know, there's something else out there, like, who am I? Just go after it. Don't let that go and keep doing what you're doing always. Like, there is an incredible life out there, and it's not very different to what some people might already be living. The only difference is knowing more about yourself, and then suddenly life just feels more incredible. And it's just like that inner connection then allows all the, you know, external things to look more incredible, even if it's just, you know, a blue sky, a green plant, anything.
Yeah, I think that's exactly spot on. And to your credit, it's not just getting the book and reading it, but it's taking the time to reflect on it, right? So you're being asked questions, but the powerful part of what you're doing is you're responding to the questions and exploring. So kudos to you for that. But it doesn't have to be hard. The work can feel hard when you're doing the work, right? It can feel, a lot of pain can come up, but it doesn't need to be so hard. Like you said, it can be reading a book and writing some responses. It's about discovering who you are, exactly what you said, and coming back to yourself, and everything else will fall into place. You don't have to go out and make things happen for yourself. You have to go in and connect with yourself, and everything else is going to work out and happen for you. So it really is what you said. You pick up a book, you answer some questions. Meditation can seem really scary and like a big deal, but really it's about sitting up straight, closing your eyes, and taking 10 deep breaths. And most of the people maybe listening today haven't taken one deep breath today, but those 10 deep breaths, or in years. And it can change not only your day, but your life, just by breathing more deeply and understanding, what does it feel like when my body breathes? So it can be quite simple, and I think that is something that I would like people to understand, is that it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big change. It can be just as simple as a minute, 1 minute a day, that can change everything for you. As long as it's intentional and focused, like your hour and a half, right? If you're focused and intentional about the time that you're taking with yourself, that's where the magic happens.
Totally. And then that replicates to other areas in your life, because a lot of questions I get are around, you know, how do you merge your passion with your career? Because I've been lucky enough to have that, but, you know, how do you find your true passion and stop looking for it out there? It's all inside. Until you do the work internally, nothing. I mean, you might get lucky and find it, but like, what's gonna guide you in the right direction is getting to know yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else will unfold. And I think, like, again, one of the things I love about the kinds of, like, the things you share online is that you not only share a quote, you share a quote, but follow it up with questions to help us all go a little bit deeper. And it's so important. And ultimately, as I said, like, it just helps you connect with who you are, with, you know, how you want to live your life, even the things you want to eat, which actually is something I wanted to ask you about. Like, has your journey with, you know, getting to, you know, your inner work and getting to know yourself, how has that then impacted your more, you know, your habits, like your diet, the kind of exercise you do? Because I seem to remember you used to or are vegan and gluten free. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Or, and like, why did you make that decision? Was it an ethical choice? Was it for health, sustainability reasons, or all the above?
Yeah. So it started almost by accident. About 12 years ago, when I came back to really a consistent yoga practice and was on a lot of medication for depression, anxiety, migraines, high blood pressure, all of the things. And I knew, like, something has to change. So I had left my job and gotten back into yoga. I did my yoga teacher training, and I just didn't feel well, ever. I was kind of always sick.
Was this at the time where you were going through, like, a divorce, or was that not related to that at all?
Okay. No, before that. And so I first started by getting rid of dairy, because it was more of a physical sickness. And every time I ate, I was sick. So I stopped eating dairy. And then I was like, wow, that helped a lot. After a few months, that changed everything. And then I noticed, when I'm eating red meat, like a burger, I don't feel well. So I stopped eating red meat. And then it just kind of grew in that way. And then maybe after 3 years, I realized I was eating so well, just all vegan, but something still wasn't right. So then that's when I realized, like, maybe it's the gluten. So it's just kind of like gradual elimination. Once I eliminated gluten, my life changed. And so I was vegan and gluten-free for many years. Veganism then developed into much more sustainability, ethical. Now I'm like, you couldn't pay me $1 million to eat an animal, you know, like, no way. So it definitely started as a physical health thing, and then I just became more and more compassionate as I became more and more vegan. And then I kind of played around then with gluten and sugar, chocolate. I'll be like, I'm vegan until you hand me a gelato from Italy, and that's it, you know, like, that's what's happening. So I'm not like your most well-behaved vegan. But recently I've been going through some hard health issues, and everything that I'm seeing is leading me back to, I know what works for my body, and I need to listen to it. So again, for the past couple weeks, again, it's been like, no processed sugar, no gluten, vegan. I'm all vegan now. So it's always a constant reminder when there's dis-ease in the body. It lets me know, but it's my job to listen and then to make the changes. So veganism and gluten-free, really, it changed my life completely. Completely.
But I think, again, it just goes back to listening to what your body is telling you, because for me it's exactly the same. It's like, it's not the case anymore, but I remember times where I looked at a piece of cheese and I was like, oh my god, I want you so bad. Or a piece of jamon or whatever. But now it's like, you know what, if you want it so much, it's not happening anymore, but like, if I wanted it so much, I would have it. But then the thing is, I don't feel good when I eat those things, and that's why I stopped eating them in the first place. So, but it's going back to listening to your body and not ignoring what it's telling you, which I think is the problem with a lot of people. A lot of people feel absolutely sick after they eat, and, you know, they just binge on sugar or like whatever fried food, and they do it again and again and again, because they're just it's really hard to listen and take action, but it's the only way to then get to a place where you wake up in the morning and you're so energized. And I think for me, beyond sustainability and animal welfare, it's my energy levels are incredible. Like, at the moment especially, I'm going through a lot at work, and then with the podcast on a personal level, like, I travel so much, and it's just having that bowl of porridge in the morning, like my brown rice and broccoli and tofu, and it is just what gets me going. And like whenever I'm feeling a little bit low in energy or like even tired, I know exactly what I need to do, and food really just like fuels me.
It's a way of nourishing yourself, and veganism isn't for everyone. I have some close friends who have tried it and they really, that's what they wanted, but in the end it wasn't what worked with the chemicals of their body. And but then they nourish themselves in other ways, and they're so mindful about how they eat. And like you said, your body tells you. When I was pregnant and nursing Luca, I wanted to eat eggs. It was like tortilla de patata, like bring it on. And it was really hard for me, but I had to think like, okay, I am choosing to listen to my body that brought me on this journey. And sure enough, that's what I needed. And so for maybe, it was like 6 months maybe. And then the day was like, okay, that's what you needed to nourish yourself. And now that's over. And then I never craved an egg again in my life. And so I think it really is this like tuning in to what nourishes you. Like you said, your porridge is more of the oats that you're eating. It's the way that you're nourishing your body with that moment of preparing healthy, nourishing food for yourself. That isn't just for your body, but it's for your spirit. And taking the time. For me, making a healthy meal at home, it maybe takes an hour, and I love it. That process is so nourishing of creating a diet that works for you and gives you energy and makes you feel awake and alive. There's sometimes that you could, eat a pizza or a burger and you just feel like horrible the whole day.
So, even if it's vegan. It's like, there's really unhealthy vegan food. Let's be clear about that as well. But I exactly that. Like I agree totally. It's choosing the right food, and it's taking that time to just be mindful, choosing right, and like it really, I see it in people. You can tell who nourishes their body well and who doesn't. Like the energy you project onto others, and like how you come across your smile even. It's like the health projects externally, doesn't it? But again, it all it boils down to listening to what works for us. And like I am super realistic. I'm vegan now, but I might not be for my whole life. If I'm pregnant and I need tortilla patata, I will probably have it, whatever. Like, and I've had different stages. I'm really open about that. I'm like, I went slightly vegetarian first, then flexi, then like fully vegan. I've been fully vegan for like 3 years now. I'm not questioning anything right now, but I'm very well aware that it might change at some stage.
Because we change.
Exactly. And like I'm never gonna judge anyone for not being vegan, and equally I won't judge myself if it gets to a point where it doesn't work for me anymore. Hence why the labels, like I've had times where I've been super passionate and trying to get everyone into it, but then I'm like, you know what, everyone's on their own journey, and like we have to respect and honor that. And yes, if they ask, we can share and we can help, but we kind of try and push people to follow our path, because if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for them.
And it wouldn't work. It would not have worked for us to be pushed into it either. It sounds like it was, like we've been talking about, listening to your body and understanding what feels good, what doesn't, what feels nourishing, what doesn't, what makes me sick, what makes me feel healthy. And it's a journey. It's been a journey for both of us. And I think my wish is that people are aware of what they're eating, what they're putting in their body, and how it makes them feel. And if we all do that, I think we'll all be making more mindful, nourishing choices. And it's the same way of like, what time do you go to bed? Like, how much sleep do you get? Are you nourishing yourself in that way?
Or are you binging on Netflix?
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. Yeah, it is. But when you do it mindfully, like if you're doing it to just take a break from life, I do that. I know exactly when I need Netflix and I go and do it. Like, but just do it consciously, right? Well, I think I'd love to leave it there. Like, I think we've got loads of really beautiful lessons. But before to wrap up, I want to ask you a question that I ask everyone on the podcast, and is from the last 12 months, a year-ish, what's been the biggest lesson for you? And looking forward, like for the next kind of year or so, what's your biggest wish?
So I think the thing I've been really working on the past couple years is rest, and being okay with not hustling and not pushing myself to or past my limits. And this goes back to the listening to your body and nourishing yourself. And I started about a year ago creating balance of, if I work 4 hours a day, I rest 4 hours a day, and kind of went on this like full in, almost overdosing on rest to make up for all of the years that I wasn't resting enough. And so I started with that kind of equal parts work and rest, because before we would like take an hour maybe a day if you're lucky. And now it's like, nope, if I work 4, I rest 4. And rest can be Netflix, it can be cooking, it can be reading, walking, being with a friend. So I have seen how much rest and time off and time away has nourished me so much and given me so much life that it's become kind of, yeah, now I'm on my sleep. I just need to sleep enough. So I would say the biggest lesson I've learned is that it's okay not to push yourself. It's okay not to be the most successful and to have the most and teach the most classes. And it's actually good for me to do less and to be more.
Yeah.
My wish for this next year is really all around like health and happiness, but happiness in the way of being present and enjoying life for what I have. And if fun adventures to Italy are built in there, I'm happy with that too. But really just being so present in the moment of appreciating everything that I have now, and really focusing on health this year and what's going to help us to be healthy and feel nourished and loved. And that's my wish for myself and for you and for
everyone.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing so many beautiful lessons, for being just an all-round incredible human being. Please keep sharing. Please keep sharing, because we all learn a lot from you. And I wish you a lot of rest and health this year.
And thank you for having me.
Of course. Oh, actually, sorry, before we go, if someone wants to find you, where can they find you online? If they want to go to your retreats or just simply get your wisdom, where can they find you?
Instagram, Facebook, my website are all Yoga with Jennison.
Okay.
So
we'll link that to the notes as well. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh,
so